So it looked like the game is over. USA will be walking away with another dub, but what is being talked about is Caitlin Clark defense. A clear defensive shift from CC. This is the type of defense that we want to see. Caitlin Clark performed at a high level with the defensive side of the ball.
Now, Caitlin Clark was benched again against Spain and against the best opponent Team USA faced in this tournament. That decision felt bigger than ever because the United States still won the game. Yes, they beat Spain 84-70, but this was also the first time in this run where Team USA looked like they actually needed a spark. And once again, Caitlin Clark was not on the floor to start. Before we go any further, I want your answer in the comments. Should Caitlin Clark be starting for Team USA? Yes or no? Because after what we just saw against Spain, this debate is only getting louder. That is the real story here. Not just that Team USA finished the qualifying tournament undefeated, not just that they went 5-0, not just that they beat another top team on paper. The real story is that when the competition finally got tougher, the Caitlin Clark lineup question did not go away. It got bigger.
It took 4 games to start her, and the only 2 players who hadn't started up until then was Caitlin Clark and Ray Burrell, and Ray Burrell was a last-minute addition to this team. But anyway, now it's so interesting if you look at the lineup here, because so many people on social media were joking like, why are you starting Caitlin Clark at power forward? Like, when will this experiment end? And in this lineup, she wasn't playing point guard, which I, again, would love the experiment to end, where they play Caitlin Clark in a position that she's not meant to play, but whatever. They beat this team by nearly 60 points. I will note that Chelsea Gray continues to start for Team USA. She has started in every single game, and I feel like that's probably just a seniority thing. It's just like a veteran thing, a political thing for Team USA. And I even hate bringing it up because I actually really like Chelsea Gray. I think her game is pretty entertaining. Chelsea Gray is not at the peak of her career at this time.
Because Spain was different. This was not one of those games where Team USA could sleepwalk through the first quarter and still win by 40. Spain came in organized, physical, and ready to make this uncomfortable. They defended hard, they moved with purpose, they made Team USA work, and for the first few minutes, that is exactly what happened. The United States led by only 5 after the first quarter. That matters, because in the earlier games, Team USA often looked overwhelming from the start. Against Spain, they looked good, but not untouchable. They looked talented, but not fully settled. It felt more like a serious international game and less like a highlight reel. And that is exactly why the Clark decision stands out. Before this game, Caitlin Clark had already been one of Team USA's most productive players in the entire event. She came into the Spain matchup leading the team in points per game and assists per game. She had already shown she could speed the game up, bend the defense, and create shots for everyone else. She had already delivered the biggest passing performance of the tournament in her debut. And just 1 game earlier against New Zealand, she had finally started. So a lot of people thought that was the shift.
We have obviously seen so many different lineups from Team USA. Some of them work, some of them don't. And just yesterday was the first time that Caitlin Clark ever started for Team USA, which if you watch my last episode, you know how I feel about that. I do think it's kind of crazy that it took 4 games to start her. And the only 2 players who hadn't started up until then was Caitlin Clark and Ray Burrell. And Ray Burrell was a last-minute addition to this team. But anyway, Caitlin Clark made her first start for Team USA against New Zealand. And the starting lineup was Kelsey Plum, Dearica Hamby, Chelsea Gray, Caitlin Clark, and Monique Billing.
A lot of people thought Team USA had seen enough. A lot of people thought Clark had earned the opening spot. Then came Spain. And suddenly, she was back on the bench. That is why fans noticed it immediately. The starting lineup was Dearica Hamby, Kalia Copper, Chelsea Gray, Ryan Howard, and Jackie Young. Clark had to wait again. She checked in midway through the first quarter, and when she did, the crowd reacted like they had been waiting for the main event. That reaction matters because it tells you something simple. People can feel when the energy changes around her. And late in that first quarter, it did. Clark scored all 5 of her early points in the final 2 minutes of the period.
Ryan Howard on the wing, up to Caitlin Clark. Clark from deep.
That helped Team USA settle down and hold control going into the break between quarters. It was not a scoring explosion, but it was a reminder of what she does. Even when the game is messy, she can bring pace. She can bring order. She can make the offense feel sharper. That is why this debate is not really about one box score. Because if you only look at the final numbers, you could say Clark had a quiet night. She finished with 7 points on 2 for 7 shooting. She hit 1 3. That is not some monster scoring line. But that is also not the full story. She still finished with 7 assists in just over 22 minutes. Think about that. On a night when her shot was not falling, she still helped drive the offense. She still created chances. She still impacted the game in the exact area where Team USA seems to need her most against stronger opponents. That is the key. Clark does not have to score 20 to change a game. Her value starts before the shot even goes up. When she is on the floor, the defense has to stretch. Defenders pick her up earlier, help defenders hesitate longer, passing windows open, teammates get cleaner looks. The floor feels wider. That pressure is real even when she is not lighting up the scoreboard. And against Spain, that pressure felt valuable because Spain kept hanging around. Team USA led 44-32 at halftime, which sounds comfortable. And by the end of the third quarter, they were up 14. So to be fair, this was never a collapse. Team USA never completely lost control. They were still the better team. They still had more talent. They still deserved to win. But this game felt different. That is the phrase that matters most. It felt different because Spain asked harder questions. It felt different because Team USA had to answer them. And it felt different because when that happened, people naturally looked back at the starting lineup and wondered why Clark was still not part of it. That is not disrespect to Chelsea Gray. That is not criticism of every veteran on the roster. And it is not saying Kara Lawson has no reason for what she is doing. There are possible explanations. Maybe the staff wanted more veteran control early. Maybe they liked Clark against second units. Maybe they wanted to balance touches. Maybe they trusted experience to absorb Spain's first punch. All of that is possible. But even if you accept those reasons, the question still remains. At what point does production force the issue? Because Clark was not some fringe bench piece in this tournament. She was one of the engines of the offense. She was one of the main reasons Team USA looked so dangerous in transition. She was one of the players opponents had to prepare for first. And yet, in the biggest test of the tournament, she still watched the opening tip from the sideline. That is why the decision feels so strange. And that is also why this story works so well for fans. It is not just about Clark the player. It is about what Team USA is saying with its choices. When a player leads your team in scoring and assists across the event, most people expect that player to start. That is the normal basketball logic. So when that does not happen, fans start searching for another explanation. They start asking whether the staff is being too cautious. They start asking whether reputation still matters more than current impact. And they start asking whether Team USA is making this more complicated than it needs to be. The Spain game added fuel to all of that, because this was the game where the margin for error felt smaller. This was the game where the opening minutes mattered more. This was the game where shot creation, composure, and offensive rhythm mattered more. And those are exactly the things people believe Clark gives this team. So no, this is not the game where you say Team USA failed without Clark starting. That would be too much. But it is absolutely the game where you say the decision became harder to defend. That is the distinction. The United States won, but the question survived. And after Spain, it probably got stronger, because if Caitlin Clark can still give you 7 assists on an off-shooting night, still change the feel of the offense, still command crowd energy the moment she checks in, and still be one of your most productive players in the whole tournament, how long do you keep pretending this is just a minor lineup choice? It is not minor anymore. It is a real talking point. And going into bigger games later this year, it is only going to get louder. That is why the Spain result matters beyond the scoreboard. It was not just another win. It was a stress test, a clue, a preview of the kind of game where your best creators matter most. And in that kind of game, people are going to keep looking at Caitlin Clark and asking the same thing. Why is she still not starting? For me, that is the biggest takeaway from Spain. Not that Team USA won, not that they stayed unbeaten, but that the Clark question is now impossible to ignore. Because after Spain, it feels like that answer is getting more obvious every game. If you're still watching, drop Start Clark in the comments.
to be here with you guys today. Finally, we got what we asked for. It's about damn time. After demanding it, clamoring for it, Team USA finally puts Caitlin Clark into the starting lineup. However, everything that glitters ain't gold.
Caitlin Clark finally got her first Team USA start against New Zealand. Question for you, did Team USA just quietly admit they had to trust Caitlin Clark more? Comment yes or no if you think they did, and if it was about time, because that is the real story from this game. The final score says Team USA beat New Zealand 101-46 in another blowout. Clark finished with 14 points and 6 assists.
Start the game, great start by New Zealand.
Caitlin Clark tries again. This time it's good.
On the surface, that sounds like just another solid stat line in a game Team USA was always expected to win. But that is not what made this game important. What made this game important is that something changed before the opening tip. For the first time in this tournament, Caitlin Clark was in the starting lineup. And that changes the entire conversation, because a few days ago, the story around Clark was all about her coming off the bench. People were asking why she was not starting. People were debating whether Team USA was easing her in, protecting her, or still trying to figure out how much they trusted her in this environment. But against New Zealand, that question got a very different answer. They started her. And once they did, the game immediately became about more than points. It became about role. It became about trust.
Looking for Clark.
Angel Reese has been so good cleaning the glass that I'm guessing that she does not.
1.5-minute mark of the first half. USA up big, 49-18. Caitlin Clark, no one steps up, drives, kicks it to Becker.
And it became about what Team USA is really learning about Caitlin Clark in this tournament. That is why this game matters. Not because New Zealand pushed Team USA to the limit. They did not. Not because Clark had a crazy 30-point explosion. She did not. This mattered because Team USA changed her role, and Clark responded the way stars respond: calm, efficient, in control. Early in the game, Clark gave everyone the exact image they were waiting for: a deep three. That one shot mattered because it instantly reminded everyone that even in a loaded Team USA lineup, Clark still has a unique kind of pressure on a defense. The moment she crosses half court, the floor feels different. Defenders think differently. The spacing changes, the urgency changes, and even in a blowout, that stands out. But the interesting part is that Clark did not force the game.
Even just holding the ball so they can see it. They steal it just like that. If they see the ball, they can get their hands on it.
After that, she did not start hunting shots. She did not turn the game into a personal statement. She let the game come to her. That is part of why this performance is so important. Because sometimes the loudest way to prove you belong is not by forcing a headline. It is by showing you can run the game cleanly inside a stacked roster without disrupting everything around you. That is what Clark did here. She finished with 14 points, 6 assists, 2 steals, and 0 turnovers. 0 turnovers, that part cannot be ignored, because when people talk about international basketball, one of the first things they bring up is discipline, decision-making, pace, reading pressure, protecting the ball. So for Clark to get her first start, handle a major role, and finish with 0 turnovers says a lot more than just the scoring total. It says she looked comfortable. It says she looked settled. And most importantly, it says Team USA could trust her with more. The score also helps tell the story. New Zealand briefly hung around early. For a moment, this was not a total runaway. But once Team USA found another gear, the game was over fast. The United States closed the first quarter with a huge run, led 27-12 after one, then won the second quarter 27-6. By halftime, it was 54-18. That is domination. And in games like that, you learn something interesting about stars. Sometimes the box score gets spread around because the team is so deep. Sometimes another score leads the game. Sometimes the highlights are shared across 5 or 6 players, but you can still tell who is shaping the flow. Clark was one of those players. She was not the only reason Team USA dominated, but she was clearly one of the players driving the machine. And that is the bigger point here. This was not one of those nights where Clark needed to prove she could put up numbers. She had already done that earlier in the tournament. She already showed what she could do against Senegal. She already showed she could produce in limited minutes. This game was more about whether Team USA would move her into a more trusted role. They did, and she justified it. The third quarter is probably the best example. That is when Clark really heated up. She scored 6 points in the quarter on 2 layups and a step-back jumper, and it felt like the game completely settled into her rhythm for a stretch. That is a useful detail because it shows this was not just one early three-pointer and a bunch of quiet minutes after that. She had another clear scoring burst later in the game that pushed her total higher and reminded everyone how quickly she can build momentum. Then there was the passing. One of the cleanest moments came when Clark set up Kiki Iriafen for an easy bucket. It looks simple, but that is part of what makes Clark dangerous. She creates easy points that do not always feel dramatic until you look up and realize the defense is constantly reacting to her. And that is why 6 assists matters. Not because 6 is some giant number by itself, but because it matched the eye test. She looked like one of Team USA's offensive engines. She looked like someone the team could play through, not just play around. That is a huge difference. Because when Clark was coming off the bench, the debate was easy to frame. People could say Team USA was being cautious. They could say the roster was crowded. They could say the staff wanted balance. But once she moves into the starting lineup and still looks this comfortable, the debate changes. Now the question is not, should she be trusted? Now the question is, how big should her role become? That is where this gets really interesting heading into the final game against Spain. Because this New Zealand matchup may look like just another blowout in the standings, but for Clark, it feels like a turning point. It feels like the game where Team USA quietly told everyone that her place is growing. And to be honest, they almost had no choice. Clark has been too productive in this tournament to ignore. She has scored efficiently. She has led with her passing. She has looked more in control with each game. And now the coaching staff gave her the start. That does not happen by accident. That happens because what they are seeing in practice, in games, and inside this tournament is matching what fans have been saying for a while. She changes the offense. Even when she is not the top scorer, she changes the offense. Even when she is not dominating the ball every possession, she changes the offense. That is what special guards do. And that is why this performance should not be judged only by whether 14 points feels big enough. That misses the point. The point is that Clark stepped into a bigger role and made it look normal. That is powerful, because the hardest thing for a young star on a loaded national team is not always making highlights. Sometimes the hardest thing is making a complicated situation look easy. Fitting into a veteran roster, playing with pace, making the right reads, knowing when to score and when to organize, not forcing the issue, not wasting possessions. Clark did all of that. And she did it in her first start. So yes, Team USA crushed New Zealand. Yes, the final score was ugly. Yes, this roster is deep enough that one player never has to do everything. But if you were watching closely, the biggest takeaway was simple. Caitlin Clark's role changed. And once it changed, she looked ready for even more. That is why this game matters. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was revealing. It revealed that Team USA is getting more comfortable putting the ball in Clark's hands. It revealed that Clark can start and still keep the offense flowing. And it revealed that the old bench storyline is starting to lose its power. Because when you finally get the start and the game immediately looks this smooth, people stop asking whether you belong. They start asking how far this can go. And that is the real story from USA versus New Zealand. If you're still watching, comment yes if you think Team USA has finally made its Caitlin Clark decision. The one small change I'd still consider is replacing the last line with, if you're still watching, comment yes if you think Team USA finally made the right call with Caitlin Clark.